everyone. Happy Thursday. I'm very excited about today because I've actually got to know Jane really well over the last few months, and I know the impact that she's having on my clients and also on me. A very interesting, brilliant communicator. So we're going to have a great time talking to Jane Piper in a minute about focusing in the age of distraction. So here we are. Carol Ann is going to be managing chat. So if you see her looking down a little bit, please do chat with us. We always love that and know that you're there. And if you're watching this back, not at 1 o'clock on a Thursday, then good to hear from you, and maybe mark it in your diary for the future. We always have super people here and really good, real and raw chat about life. So we've got Kim Adele and Carol Ann and Sam Linley here, which is very exciting. Our hosts are always here, and I've got the great pleasure of hosting today. So before we come to Jane, thought we would go around the room and just think about what's going on this week in our lives and maybe things that sort of the universe is telling us at the moment. So Kim Adele, how's your week going?
Yeah, it's been good, and apologies for not making it last week. My little girl went to her first ever induction at Big School, and it was a real moment to reflect, and she goes again tomorrow, but just about how quickly we grow and develop and learn. And we see it probably more so in our children, don't we? But actually the same is true of us in our business. And this week I've really been thinking about actually how much I've grown within my business, but so have my clients, and that we don't always take that moment to reflect back and see how far we've come. We're too busy looking at how much further we've got to go. And yet when you do, it can be a real moment of learning, can't it?
Oh, I've got to segue into the way that I've grown. I've grown about 3 inches in my girth.
Me too, lovely, me too.
Oh my goodness, it's really upsetting because we've got our first big dinner tonight for our Fit 100 clients up in London, and the weekend I went to I'll try on some of my dresses. Literally, the zip at the side was about this big a gap.
They shrunk in the wardrobe. The pandemic did that to them.
No, so I joined David Lloyd this week, and I've already done today, Thursday. I've already done 3 classes, a gym session, swam, and this morning at home I did David Lloyd's got this app, and I did a dance class this morning. So I'm really upset about it. So that's how I've grown. So that's a bit of reality about my week. Carol Ann, have you been growing? Oh, just unmute, darling. You need to unmute, Carol Ann.
I did.
There you go. Oh, it's gone back again.
It's coming back. It won't let me speak. Well, no, I'm not growing because we had a fabulous nutritionist on when you weren't here, Penny, and I've lost a lot of weight with her. So she's doing fantastic. She's doing fantastic work with me. But I have grown in my business. In fact, what things I've noticed this week is we're getting very near the end of all these restrictions now. We've probably got another month of it. And it seems odd that we're so close now. No mask, you're able to go to your department stores and shops without wearing the mask. But I still think people are cautious. And next week, I'm hoping to have a first in-person, all meeting up networking event. For 18 months, it's all been online. And I'm just trying to figure out and get a gauge of how many people actually want to do that. And no one's stepping forward one way or another. Because obviously you can do it on Zoom again. And I thought, no, it'd be nice to me. If the weather's nice, we'll have a drink outside and make the most of it. It's hard to get people to commit. So, even if 5 people show up, I will still hold it outside, and trying to encourage people, because there's something about the in-person connection that we're all missing. And I think once they get back to it, they'll always want to do it, and maybe less of Zoom and more meeting up. That's what I'm hoping anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, actually planning this event, because I planned it for this Thursday, because by the 21st of July, we were supposed to be all open. And it is very, very complicated. And actually, we are making a loss on the event now because, while we're in this, the social distancing aspect, if you're running an event. And then this morning, somebody's just had their test thing come through saying that they've been near someone with COVID and they can't come. And so I know it's still uncertain times, isn't it? I think it's clever that you're going to do it outside, though. But I think you're right, Caroline. I got a feeling when you were saying that some of it is about just giving people the confidence to start coming out.
I've got to do it because that's how we do the best business, is actually meeting people. And I think that's where you get the community support as well. And we've been great. We've been doing it for 18 months now and networking online. But it's time to get in front of people now.
Yeah, no, good for you. I wish I could leap up there and spend some time with you at that event. Sam, what about yourself?
Yeah, I'm just going to piggyback off what Kim was saying, because you're right, Kim. I've spent the morning actually meeting up with my ex-business partner. So Cloud9 has been going for 11 years, and 6 of those years I spent building it with him. He retired and went and lived in Portsmouth and have a lovely time there. But it was amazing to catch up with him this morning and talk about, back on day one and the first 6 years together. And you're right, Kim, we don't often reflect on where we've come from. And, the business is quite different now. It's quite similar in its values and the way that its identity, but the sorts of work that I'm doing now is quite different. It was really interesting, actually, just reflecting on that. So you're absolutely right, Kim. Yeah, it's sometimes it's great to reflect and review and recognize how far you've come and where you're going. So yeah, it's been a really great morning.
It's that positive reflection, isn't it, that we all need to do rather than look at what's still to be done. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And that must be quite an emotional thing for you, Sam.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely that every time he's back in Essex, he always calls me. We always meet up for a lunch or a breakfast, and it's lovely just to catch up. Yeah, great friend.
So Jane, I'm going to introduce you properly in a minute, but just keep along this theme. How's your week been going?
It's been a good week. It's really interesting. So I can relate to all of what you were saying, apart from, not what you were talking to about dresses not fitting Penny, because I, over the pandemic, spent far too much time, well, not too much time, but I got crazy on exercise. So I've been, so probably doing the other thing where I have been working out too much and probably need to relax a bit more. But yeah, definitely this idea of the anxiety of coming out, I relate to that, Carol Ann, because I'm seeing, it's interesting that it's been nearly a month or so since things have opened up here in Switzerland, but it's taking a month or so for people to start inviting other people to coffees and lunches and things like that. So it was last week I had my first face-to-face coffee with somebody rather than these virtual coffees. So it is, people do, I'm sure, have a bit of anxiety about meeting up again. And of course it's easy on a one-on-one, but it's harder on, when you're thinking the bigger the group. Then I definitely relate also to what Sam and Kim were saying about looking back and seeing how far we've come. And it is a time of change. I mean, it's summer solstice this week and the 30th of June coming up, so half a year. So it was definitely in my mind tomorrow to do a bit of planning and start thinking of the other half of the year and where we're going forward now. But also reflecting where the last few months have been.
Yeah, when people say to me things like Christmas is closer now than we've been away from it, and I think, oh no.
Oh no, I'm not sure that's a positive thought or not.
That half-year mark. So let me introduce you all to Jane Piper, and please look Jane up on LinkedIn and also look up a book on Amazon, Focus in the Age of Distraction. So Jane is an organizational psychologist, and this book is actually a best-selling book, and quite rightly so. And it looks at the impact of digital technology on our well-being and ways of working. And she's really interested in the intersection of humans and technology. So she challenges us to look at the impact that technology is having on our work and our non-work lives. And that obviously means our well-being and our happiness. And I think this is going to be a brilliant conversation with you, Jane, because I think this is a subject that every single one of us must be able to relate to, especially me. I sound like I'm a wreck today, but I've got my, I sound like I've got my RSI and my sciatica. So all of this weight gain pain is all sitting at my desk at technology the whole time, which is why I need to get some more balance. So Jane, give us a little bit of so that everybody, so that Caroline and Kim Adele and Sam can join in here, a bit of context about why this subject became really important to you.
Yes, so it was like Kim Adele. I had a job in corporate for many, many years, and I was working away there. And I found that you got into sort of a bit where it was hard to change. So I'd done a lot of change management work, which means I'd handled a lot of very stressful redundancies. And I got very stressed myself. But every time I thought, okay, it's the company and I need to find another job, I would go and interview with these companies and they would say something to me like, oh, yes, you'll be perfect to manage our next change management. So it seemed very difficult to do something different because you've got sort of narrowly focused into this area that really wasn't a particularly pleasant area at the end. So I decided that, what I wanted to do was step out and do something differently. And it was this sort of feeling of, I was stuck so much in that moment when I was working with the technology, working long hours and being full on and basically living on this high stress lifestyle, flying around. There's some glamorous bits flying around the world, but once you've sort of seen one airport and one airport hotel and one business meeting room and stuff, it really isn't that much fun after all. And I realized that I spent a lot of time blaming the company, but in fact, there were things that I could be doing as well. So there's this connection about how I manage my health and well-being, and how I manage my relationship and basically my boundaries with work. And so it was then that led me to say, okay, some of it, that the technology has made it so easy for us to connect in this working world, and we need to learn how to manage that boundary. So, I mean, there's a lot about the technology and social media and things like this, but this is also this boundary that we have between our work and our life that the technology now allows us to work 24/7.
Yeah. And what is it? And I'd love, Kim Adele, you've opened up your mic, so sorry, I didn't notice that, but I just want to ask this. What is the trigger for an HR department, for example, to say, actually, I think this is important, we need to have a chat with you, Jane, and bring you in to help? What is that? What is the trigger? What are they noticing?
I mean, sadly, often they've had one or two cases of burnout, and then they think, oh, we have to do something about this, because it's then that they start seeing it and seeing the impact that it has on people. And most people don't like that feeling, whether they're an HR or they're a line manager, to see that they had somebody who basically now has, there's the business cost of having a person off on long-term illness, because burnout now has overtaken back injury. Used to be always the one where people had the longest time off on sick leave. Now burnout's taken over from that area there. So there's a cost to the business, but also at a very human level, you just don't like that feeling to think, oh, I was their boss and was it somehow me that drove them, or that to tip over the edge here, and how did I not notice and things. So it's at that point I often find that sadly, it's the pain that causes them to do that. There are, of course, some well-intentioned companies who sort of go, okay, well, we need to do something about well-being in our organisation now, but it more often, sadly, is something happens and it tips them over the edge to decide to look at how long people are working and whether they are setting effective boundaries between work and non-work time.
So they are. So we love you to think that all companies will be proactive, but reactive. Adele, I know you want to ask a question. Oh, and sorry, Sam, I'll come to you after Kim.
So all of that resonates, and I feel your pain. I've run a few horrendous redundancy programs myself, and they're not nice, are they? You can do them with kindness, but I think often what I see is a lot of leaders that don't understand the impact they're inadvertently having. And I know I was dreadful at this, which was do as I say, not do as I do. So I would be the one that messaged when I was on holiday, that read every email, because I wanted to be there and to be supportive. But inadvertently, what I was doing was making my people think that they needed to do the same. Because even though I was saying, please don't take a break, one, I wasn't showing that I needed one. And that was quite a lesson for me of how I needed to detox myself from that desire. Do you see that a lot in kind of the people you work with?
Yes. I think there's two things I want to pick up there. One is there's this, as you say, it comes from a good intention. You want to be supportive, but people who are in senior positions don't see how much impact they have as being the role model in this very tiny community within the workplace, and the fact that, you know, the boss looking good in the boss's eyes. So if you have the I'm always on, then your team will also, if they're hardworking and want to achieve, will be as well. And so that's hard to break. And we see that with really small things. There was a great study done where basically if a manager sends an email on a Sunday evening, how many of their direct reports also work on a Sunday evening? And it's basically a ripple effect. And so the more emails which are sent on a Sunday, the more time it worked. It was clear. The other one is, and I don't know exactly where you worked, but is this where it becomes a badge of honour to be busy and to be showing you're busy. And in a highly competitive environment, you know, people even do things such as schedule their emails, even though they're not sending emails, schedule totally pointless emails to impress their boss that they're working late in the evening. And that this highly competitive culture is just crazy. I mean, I guess you've heard of some of those cases where people have the Goldman Sachs case, I think, is the one where, you know, caused quite a furore about how many hours these young people were working in this hard, very competitive environment. Yeah.
Sam, what were you going to say? Some great points that you've made, Jane.
I was just going to look at your book, which talks about, you know, focus of the age of distraction. What is the biggest sort of source of distraction that you see and witness amongst, you know, the corporate land now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to say the corporate land versus the, you know, I'm too much on my phone looking at Instagram photos and things. You say the corporate world, it's email. It's this instant response to your email and not having a space to think. So basically, if you always are constantly answering your email, and if you think about people in business are getting about 100 emails a day, and so if you take that over a normal working day, you're interrupted about every 5 or 6 minutes to answer an email. So if you've got a big problem to think your way through, you've got a presentation you're working on and you want to start at slide 1 and get to slide 30, you've got a detailed spreadsheet you need to do some analysis in, 5 to 6 minutes isn't going to crack it. So this distraction to be always on and answering. And some of this comes from a good place. We want to be served, and this whole thing about you're serving internal customers and you've got an SLA, a service level agreement where you respond to people in this time, has almost created this fast-moving culture where we don't allow our corporate people time to actually have an hour or two away to do the deep work that they need to do, which, you know, I work in the pharma sector. Finding a cure for cancer is not going to happen in 5 to 6 minutes, just as a stupid example, but you know what I mean.
Caroline, I think one thing I want you to do in a minute, Jane, is something you did to me, which because I think this could segue into about multitasking, is that amazing thing you did on me about
Right.
I want to do that in a minute, but Caroline, what were you going to say?
Yeah, if you look in the Times today and all over the papers, there's an interview with this coach called Glennon Doyle in America. She's good friends with Oprah and Brené Brown and everyone. Changed her life in a very radical way. Christian lady, left her husband for another woman, kids, etc. But having just finished her book, there's a word that she mentioned which is called Selah, S-E-L-A-H, and it's from the Hebrew Bible. And it means taking a moment to pause. I'll write it in the chat box. And this is what you were just saying, Jane. We're rushing ahead. We're not having time to think. That's not the human way of things. And I love this word because it's basically giving yourself a moment of almost holy like reflection when you've just had some bad news, when you just had a big lump of work come in, when you have to check in with your body. Am I feeling well? It's allow yourself a moment of reflection, consideration, and grounding. You know, we don't do it. We just think we have to pell-mell into the next thing. And I thought that's a really great takeaway from the book. And it's about personal boundaries as well. All of us here have our own businesses. We don't have a boss. We are the boss. So we need to have the best healthy personal and professional boundaries. And yet I can get on my computer at midnight. do it for myself. I thought, what's the first thing you do when you wake up? It'd be lovely to have a cup of tea, but I get straight on my phone, emails, the Times, Twitter, before I've even put my foot on the mat, So it's about giving yourself that breath of, wow, I deserve a bit more than this, So I just wanted to add that from the life.
I like that, Sila.
I'm going to I'll put it in the chat box. It's a lovely word, and you can look it up. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you, Jane.
So, Jane, I know the output of the support that you give people is to increase their productivity as well as their well-being. I know that's a big part of it. And what I'm getting a sense of listening to you is, we talk about company culture, but there's obviously this microculture within a team as well, where, company culture could be fantastic, but the microculture is determined by the leader of that small team. And you did this exercise with me, which I found, because we all like to think that we can multitask, don't we?
Oh, so, yes. It's especially women. We think that we're better than men at multitasking, don't we?
This really got through to me what you did. I'm going to pick Sam. So it's about. Can you do it, Jane, with Sam?
Yeah. So I just pick up my timer, which is not on my phone. So Sam, it's not really that difficult. The first thing you have to do is count out loud from 1 to 10. And as you're counting out loud, I'm going to start the timer and see how long it takes you. So count as fast as you can from 1 to 10, and I'll start the timer. So starting now.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay, that took you 3 seconds. So remember that, Penny, 3 seconds. Now, you can do that doing from A to J. So we'll repeat that with A to J. So ready, go.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J.
Another 3 seconds.
Well, awesome.
So now you have to go 1A, 2B, 3C, and so on. And I'm going to gain time how long that takes you. So ready, go.
1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E, 6F, 7. Don't know where I'm at.
That's what I did.
That was 11 seconds.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the aim of this little experiment is to show that multitasking is harder than you think. So we have the automated patterns where we can do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Count. They are very automated, and we think that it's easy to switch from one to the other. But when we actually have to switch very fast between the two of them, you're actually using more resources to do that. Yeah. So the thing being in the work context, you think, oh, it's just a quick email. I'll answer that now. But you actually have to do that switching, and that switching, your brain struggles with that. So it's very difficult to multitask basically on the same channel, if you know what I mean. The counting and the numbers, they are something that, takes up that short-term memory and uses the same part of the brain. And basically that's extremely difficult to be able to do those two things at the same time, and that's switching. So you're deep in a presentation, you're working away, and you think, oh, just answer that quick email. You break your flow of where you were. Or you start one task and you don't actually get to the finish. It's still hanging there in the back of your mind like an open tab. And so there are certain things that we can do to multitask. So often people say don't multitask. I mean, that's a bit too general. But there are things, but they need to be able to use different parts of your sort of senses. So if you are a good driver and you've driven for many, many years, you can drive and listen to the radio. But you'll also notice that there's no country in the world that says you can drive and text on your phone, because texting takes too much of your attention. So you can drive and you can have a conversation, but you'll also notice that if you are driving along the motorway and you're having a conversation with the person next to you in the car, however, if you got into the city and you have to work out where you're going and you're trying to remember where you are, all of a sudden you stop talking to that person. So we have a limited amount of resource. So if you really want to be effective in what you're doing and be productive, then focusing on one task at a time and concentrating on it really actually helps.
Is that why when we reverse into a parking space, we turn the radio down?
Perfect example of why you're doing it, or to hear that beep, 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 beep crash sound.
But I think in all seriousness, I think, that that little exercise you did was a great example of why I believe that in business we should have a default diary. So we have one hat on at a time, because we can't possibly be effective wearing 3 or 4 different hats all in one go. And just being able to focus on, you know, whether it's a client relationship, a client piece of work, a project, or sales or marketing, you know, I always recommend 2 or 3 hour chunks. So you can really absorb yourself in that role and then move on to a different chunk, rather than trying to do 2 or 3 different things all at once.
Exactly. That's the advice, and helping people find those boundaries and setting those boundaries, especially in the corporate world, as I say, where there is so much pressure to be on and available and responding, that you can do that. But entrepreneurs, the same thing. You know, I have to respond to this email quickly for a potential client or something like that. So giving yourself those chunks of time. And when I wrote the book, very much, it was interesting to go and be coached and be told, basically, if you want to write your book, you know, set aside 2 hours in your diary so that you can get into writing. And a lot of the people that, you know, you hear about, various people who you would, you know, who you hear have achieved great things, and many of them have routines where they have set aside significant chunks of time in their day to be able to achieve that, or free from distraction.
No, it's fantastic, Jane. Can you believe how fast this time goes? I have a problem with a do it now attitude, which I learned through work, you know, Mary Gregory, that's written the book Ego. That's actually comes from ego, that do it now attitude. And I've really got to sort that out, because that must really affect us if we've got that sort of like a personality issue that I have. Jane, that was amazing. That was so amazing to go through that. Thanks for playing in that as well, Sam. And so got 3 minutes left to do a bit of a sort of a goodbye to everyone, which includes us just quickly running around the room of some tips to send us off positively into a week ahead. So Kim Adele, have you got anything you'd like to share? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think, and that probably comes from what we've been talking about today, I think my tip would be to give yourself some space every day to just think, because we don't allow ourselves that luxury, and we're always much more productive when we do.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. And Carol Ann?
No, I would say the same, and I would think of that word "selah," which I put in the chat box, but just give yourself a pause. You see something come in, it might be a bit of bad news, it might be a big job, it might be someone running up to you and saying, Mum, can you give yourself a moment? Give yourself a moment just to gather before launching in, especially if you know it's something portentous. Allow yourself the grace of time. So that's what I would say. Similar to Kim's, have time to think.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you're my guru on life balance, actually, Caroline, as well.
Thank you.
And Sam, what are your thoughts to send everybody off with?
Well, I'm going to follow the same theme then. So if we're talking about a default diary, where most people, I believe, go wrong is they fill it up. So they believe that we've got 8, maybe 10-hour working hours in a day, so I'm going to fill all of those up in my default diary. But the trick is to leave a couple of 3-hour chunks, because life gets in the way, things come up. And if we don't leave those chunks, we don't have the time to pause, to reflect, or to move things around to suit our mindset. So my tip is, if you're going to have a default diary, and I recommend everybody does, make sure you've got a couple of chunks, good chunks in there as well throughout your week. Don't fill it up.
Yeah, that is a really good point. I'm going to have a look at my next week diary, actually. And then Jade, what are your thoughts?
I agree totally with what's been said. It's so good to hear the setting some time aside to reflect. But I also think the other thing to just add to that would be treat yourself with some self-compassion. When things don't get done, when you haven't had a good day that you're concentrating, telling yourself off about it won't actually help. So it's just flip the page, start again the next day with the good intention, and work on these things. Because so often I think I will achieve so much more in a day, and a task I think will take 2 hours actually takes 3 hours, and then I didn't get that task done, and da-da-da-da-da. And then there are legitimate interruptions, you know. A client contacts you in an absolute panic fit about something, you know. You can't just say, I'm sorry, this is my 2-hour break time, you know. So, you know, it's recognizing that, okay, the day didn't go as planned, but that's fine. Tomorrow is another day.
Yeah. And you use that self-compassion word. And I suppose my tip would be, the reason that I shared at the beginning that I have put on weight in lockdown is because I didn't apply a lot of that. And now this week I've done loads and I feel so much better for it. In fact, in our family group that we've got in WhatsApp with the kids, Ross wrote back and said, "Oh God, Mum's on a high." And I think they think I've been smoking something, but it's just because I've been exercising. Because I'm so much happier for it. So everyone, go out, give yourself some time, but also please consider about how to focus in this age of distraction. And thank you so much, Jane. That was a wonderful show with you. Really appreciate it. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.